Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I can do an update to a video I did a few days ago, which is titled, My Friendship with Alpha Helped Me Turn Around My Life and Save My Marriage. And guys, that story is all about the guy who's, I believe, late 30s, and his whole life he was a classic nice guy, blue pill type of guy, and his marriage really was getting worse and worse by the day. Not to mention his health, because he gained a ton of weight, all that. And as you recall, he was certainly, that nice guy, blue pill mindset was going on since he was a kid. And then one day he met a guy at a party, he and his wife, and this guy's a complete opposite, total alpha. But an alpha in a good way, not a jerk. And they became friends, workout partners, and his friendship really helped him turn his life around. Lost 100 pounds, great shape, or shall I say considerably better shape, and he started changing his approach with his wife. He started being a leader, started checking her, no bullshit, and now they're hooking up all the time. She's happy with him, and really his life's gotten better, which is awesome. Anyhow, this is now the story about his buddy. A lot of you guys in the comment section wanted to know about his friend, his origin story, all that. So his buddy wrote in to share his story here about what his life was like when he was a kid, what led him down the path, how he met his wife, his dynamics with his wife, certain rules with regards to the gals and the guys. It's a really good one here that I think a lot of you guys could benefit from, especially if you recovering nice guys, if you will, you recovering betas that are really trying to turn yourselves around, because you know darn well that you did a lot of things wrong, like in these stories, and you can hear from a guy that really has his shit together. A little longer, but it's worth your time. It says here, hey SSM. So my friend recently sent you the story of how he changed from a blue pill guy to a purple pill guy. He told me to tell you that you knew it was me. He told me that you even read it on your channel, and I went to check it out. I was shocked that he had used me as an example, and that he changed my wife's name to Hinata. He says, yes, he is a weeb. I noticed that some comments asked about my backstory, so the story is a little long, and you can cut out any parts that you find boring if you decide to read it on your channel. Bro, I appreciate you writing in, and hey, no, the story's good, so I'm not cutting anything out. It says here, he breaks this down to different sections, his family and all that, and the first part is about his father figure. He says here, so the backstory of my father figure, I had more examples on how not to be a man. The one I did have was my grandfather at my mother's side. My real father was a piece of crap that physically abused my mom. My grandparents told my mother to not marry him, but she didn't listen. There's a shocker. He ran away from home and married when he was 18 and 19 years old. She had me when she was 20 years old and my sister at 21. Eventually, she ran away from him when my sister and I were 4 and 5 years old and ran to my grandparents' house and told them everything. She married the guy they told her not to marry because he was a piece of crap. Did it anyway. And then 5 years later, she's running back crying to them saying, I'm sorry, you were right. I should have listened. That's going to be your typical girl nowadays who is doing OnlyFans. The parents kick her out, and 5 years later, her life's in shambles. Take me back. I shouldn't have done OnlyFans. My father called the house and demanded my mother come home immediately. My grandfather asked where he was, and he answered at home. My grandfather said good and said he would be right over to kick his ass. Now, my dad was 6'2", built 24-year-old, and my grandfather was 5'9", but strong from being a construction worker and in his late 50s. My father said, come on over. When my grandfather got there, he banged on the door, and a neighbor asked if he was looking for my father's name. He said he wasn't there, and he just left. He said something spooked him, and he just tore out of there like a bat out of hell and pointed at the tire marks he left with his car. So this guy's dad wasn't so macho and tough after all. Believe me, a pissed off father, I don't care if the dude is a foot taller than him and tougher than Ivan Drago from Rocky IV. A pissed off father will take the punches and the strikes and just plow through like you wouldn't believe and drop the guy. Now my grandfather was old school, and I wanted to be like him. One thing I remember was he always made at least $1 more than his wife so he could be the provider. This was difficult as his wife was a teacher and he was a contractor that could barely read and write as he didn't finish school. When he came back from the Korean War, he started working construction jobs until he became a contractor and owned his own company. Good for him. This way, this man carried himself and burned in my brain from an early age. However, I wouldn't be there with him that long as my mother moved to a different state, with my sister and I when I was 8 years old. We would visit them every summer till I was 12, but those 3 years formed me for what I would become later on. This is my point, guys. Every young guy needs that masculine role model. If it's not your dad, because your dad's a pussy, well, let's be honest here, a lot of them nowadays, or he's not there, grandfather, uncle, somebody that a young guy needs. And unfortunately, not a whole lot walking around nowadays. Now, next up, we got his stepfather. Watch this. It says, my mom didn't really have good luck with men for a very long time. After she divorced my father, she became the typical single mom looking for love, but was used by the Chad and Tyrones. Of course, your dad was one of them. Now she was going after other ones. She didn't learn her lesson. It wasn't until she moved to the new state that she met my stepfather, and this one was just as big of a loser. I'll call him Colin. Colin dated and eventually married my mom for about 12 years. He even adopted my sister and I. This guy was a total loser, though, and he couldn't hold a job and was completely addicted to PORN. We found PORN all over the house, and he even tried to blame me for it, some of it when I was 17, to not get in trouble with my mom. What a jackass. So, yeah, real winner. My mom had my little sisters with him, and when I was 13 to 14, so I had a total of 3 sisters. Oh my God, you got your mom being who she is, and you have 3 sisters. You could end up completely different. They eventually divorced when I was 22 years old. There was a huge falling out between us 3 months later, as I was thinking of changing my last name to my grandfather's last name so I wouldn't have a bloodline name. When I asked him, instead of being an adult, he told me to take him off the birth certificate. I disowned me and hung up. I haven't talked to him in almost 17 years. I wouldn't want to be connected to that jackass either. Next up, he says my mom and sisters. So with both these bad examples of men, my mother essentially is a misandrist. All my life, she would tell my sisters how they could do anything they wanted since they were women. However, she never said that to me once because, in her words, I didn't need to hear it since I was a boy. Let's keep in mind her disdain for men. She's the one that chose, we all heard it repeatedly, losers. That was her choice. Nobody forced her to do it. But of course, it's easier than to hate on the guys and obviously treat her son like dog crap because she's angry with men. This meant that when the girls earned something or got an award at school, it was because they earned it. But when I did it, it was because I was going to earn it anyway because it wasn't as hard for me since I was a boy. This also turned my sisters into we don't need a man women and set 2 of them up for failure. So growing up in this household was hell, and by the time I was 12 years old, I was pretty much MG Tao before it became a thing. As the examples of women in my life were screaming banshees, and I didn't want anything to do with them. However, that changed when I met one of the most feminine women I've ever met. Again, it's amazing this guy ended up the way he is and as strong as he is. The 17-year-old Japanese girl. Remember, in real life, he's married to the Japanese gal, codename Hinata. So when I was in middle school, I became friends with a kid at school in the 6th grade. We played basketball together all the time, and I would get to go to his house. His older 17-year-old sister had a friend over one time that I was visiting. She was a 17-year-old foreign exchange student from Japan. She was quiet, but wasn't afraid to speak her mind. She was always trying to beat us in video games, and we played, but we never yelled or cussed when she lost. It was way different than my sister that would cuss every time she lost. She wasn't only a woman, but proud to be a woman and was very feminine. Total opposite of what he's used to in his household. This was totally different than any woman I met before. We hung out every time I was there until she moved away to the city to go to college a year and a half later. Next section, my future wife. So from age 13 to 15, I didn't really date. I had few girlfriends in high school, but would drop them the second any of them started to talk or sound like my effingest mother and sister. Very smart, bro. Very smart. That's what all guys should do. And there's plenty of them out there walking around acting like that nowadays. I didn't tell my family when I did have girlfriends as I wanted nothing to do with my toxic family. I didn't really take dating as serious as most of the girls I dated always had some characteristics of my mother that I hated. Again, more and more. When I graduated high school, I decided to go to a local community college in downtown to save money before going to a 4-year college. Smart, brother. That's what I did too, and saved a fortune. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't want to waste my money on a 4-year degree that wouldn't translate to any job in the future. In my third class of the day, I saw a small 5'3" Japanese woman in her 20s with long hair to her mid-back sitting 2 rows ahead of me. I remember thinking she was cute but thought nothing of it. However, when they took roll, she raised her hand and said Hinata, and I realized it was the Japanese girl I used to play video games with in middle school. Dude, talk about a small world. All the Bluebell nice guys be like, it's destiny, it's fate, blah, blah, blah. After class, I went up to her and said her name, and she didn't recognize me at first. When I knew her, I was 4'8" and weighed 85 pounds. I was now 5'10" and weighed 175 with a 30-inch waist. Damn, dude, that's impressive. When she realized who I was, she was shocked. Over the next 2 weeks, she would always look at me in the quad, and we would hang out between classes. I eventually told her that we should date. She said she thought we could be friends like we were when I was younger. I told her I have 2 problems with that. Number 1, men and women cannot be friends. Exactly. And number 2, if she wasn't truly interested, she wouldn't have tried to find me every day in the quad for the last 2 weeks. Exactly. Remember, pay attention to women's actions, not their words. Her actions showed you she liked you. Her words were, maybe we be friends first, trying to see if you'll be just like every other guy, and put up with that bullshit. She told me she would need to think it over. Well, you're not going to think very long. I said, no problem, and let me know. Saluted her with 2 fingers nonchalantly and walked away. Good, you walked away like, okay, whatever. She asked if I was going to throw away our relationship over this as I walked away. I looked over my shoulder and told her that I'm not throwing away any relationship, and if she liked me as a friend, she would love me as a boyfriend, and I walked away. A lot of guys wouldn't do that. Over the next week, I would see her in class and smile, but didn't interact. I caught her a few times looking at me in the quad, but I didn't go back to talk to her. By the 4th day, she called me, and I asked her if she was ready yet. She sheepishly said yes. I then said, cool, let's go out this weekend. At this point in the relationship, I led her. Remember, this guy, in his marriage, he leads the relationship. I asked her where she wanted to go, but ultimately made the decisions. For the next year, we dated, and she didn't show any red flags. Great, bro. And I'm sure you didn't put her on a pedestal or kissed her butt, and clearly she didn't demonstrate the masculine-ass, feminist ways that your mother and sisters do. When I was 19, she went back to Japan because her student visa expired, and she couldn't afford the expensive foreign tuition anymore. For the next year, we talked online and visited each other. At this point, it became very expensive booty call, so we're trying to figure out a way to get her to come back. The only way she could legally come back was on a fiancé visa, where you have to get married in 3 months. So I had 2 options. Lose the only woman that was the complete opposite of my mother, or marry her. Oh, for goodness sake almighty, there are other chicks out there. But you were 20, didn't know any better, but still. Gentlemen, this guy, I want to say he lucked out because the guy made his own luck, as you all are well aware from the first story. But this is not a good idea. So don't model this. My family was dead set against it, but at this point I didn't really care what my family thought. So at 20 years old, I married her. Smack. I don't need to even say why. You all know why, and he knows why. And right here he wrote smack. This caused a falling out with my family, and I essentially told them to F off for 5 years and didn't talk to them anymore until after my son was born 6 years later. Something about a fiasco in a later update if anybody is interested. Yeah, I'd love to hear about fiascos with your feminist mother and sisters. I'm now 39 years old and she is 43. We've been married for 18 years and we have a 12-year-old son. Congratulations, bro. So it did seem to work, which is very rare. This only worked because we are very clear gender roles, and I'll explain how we are and it will make sense. So now he's going to break down what she's like and what he's like and different important qualities. For her, he says, Hinata, number 1, she plays the feminine role. She's a very feminine woman, which is fucking rare nowadays. But I also want to point out that she's from Japan. You got to import some of those feminine women nowadays. 2, she dresses conservatively when not with me. Number 3, doesn't do girls' nights out. Number 4, doesn't embarrass me in public either by yelling at me or flirting with other men. Woman does any of that bullshit, you walk away. Or you at least check her, then walk away, or something along those lines. Number 5, she's motherly. Not only motherly, but enjoys being a mother, instead of treating it like a burden, like my mother did with me. Number 6, hasn't had sex with everyone in town. Well, nowadays you can't be a strong modern woman and empowered unless you do hook up with everybody in town. Number 7, isn't fat. Well, half the population in the US of A is either overweight or obese, so there you go. Again, she's from Japan. I don't think I've ever seen many overweight Japanese unless they're sumo wrestlers. Number 8, relies on me, meaning that when the shit hits the fan, she trusts me 100% that I will take care of it. That's only going to happen if a man is a leader and demonstrates that she can trust him to lead. Believe me, a lot of guys can't, and therefore the women take charge. Number 9, does all the cooking and cleaning, as I'm usually working 7 days a week in my office at home. It's a fair trade. If I'm working, then she is cleaning. I never asked her to do this. She does it as she wants to. That's great, man. Next one, no male friends. You are the number one man in her life. You and your son, your family, there shouldn't be any male friends. No. Now about him. He says here, for me, I'm the masculine role model. 2, I lead the relationship. 3, I'm in shape. 4, confident. 5, I protect her. 6, I protect the family. 7, I constantly tease her and make her laugh with jokes that she only understands. That's good. You're playful. That's how it should be. See all these traits, guys, he's doing here? 8, I try to make others laugh at get-together so my wife is proud of being next to me. Women usually like being with the guy that makes others laugh and versus the wallflower guy. Yeah, the gals like the guy that's popular and all that, but I don't want guys to suddenly have to become someone they're not, the center of attention, just to make some girl like them or feel proud. If that's your personality, go ahead. But if not, I got no problem with a guy who keeps to himself and has just small conversations at parties and all that, Next one. I don't ask for sex, I just do it. About 2 times a week and 2 other times a week, just fun touching since we're both tired from work. I don't really care what she's wearing. I remember seeing the movie This Is 40, where the husband couldn't get sex if his wife put on the pajamas already. I don't give a crap about the pajamas. I just take them off, and she always looks surprised I'm doing that, but gets incredibly turned on by it. Yeah, because she's attracted to you and turned on by your take-charge personality. A lot of feminists would lose their mind over that. Next one, I'm a gentleman, but not a simp. The only difference is that you are doing the nice things, but don't get anything back for doing it. Then it becomes simping. 10, I check her when she needs it. Yes, and even the best ones got to be checked from time to time when they're being bitchy. Next one, no female friends. I think you mentioned the other story that you hang out with married couples, but no single female friends. That's a big mistake. Next one, be the Chad without being the Chad. This means being the Chad alpha type, but not cheating on your wife. Not having the self-control to not cheat on your wife is actually some beta shit. Because only betas are desperate for sex and they will cheat on the wife. If you're Chadish, then you can still get some more than enough from your wife. And a Chad can just break up with her if he had to. He says examples of checking. He says, so I read the comment asking how you can check your girl. One example I had was a night when we were about to have sex. I was touching her and she was enjoying it. I picked her up and put her on top of me, and right before we were about to have sex, she randomly remembered something and asked me if I could buy her something tomorrow at the store when I was out. You're about to hook up and she brings that up. I stopped and looked at her. I gently lifted her off me and put her to the side of me and said, I'm done. I got up, put my clothes back on, and got back to bed. Then before I went to sleep, I told her I'm not desperate for sex and don't do favors for sex. Then I went to sleep. The next morning when she came back from the gym, she sheepishly came up to me and said she was sorry while tearing up. Well, of course, there were waterworks. She says she didn't mean it that way. I forgave her and then took her to bed. He says, have standards for yourself, gentlemen, and regardless of the shitty hand you were dealt with in life, you can change your outcome. Yes. The problem is a lot of guys and gals figure this is my lot in life and won't take any action to better their lives. It's much easier for people to just accept life is shitty and complain about it and blame everybody else for them not having the things they want in life than to actually be brave and work smart and hard and take calculated risks to make their lives better. That's why most people in this world exist. They don't live, and their lives are just shit. Very few people actually make an effort to make their lives better. And people will hate on you when you do try to make your life better. He says you can have 2 bad examples of a father figure, a bad example of an effiness mother, and still be okay. You just focus on being the opposite and finding the opposites of your female role model, and you'll be fine. Anybody can do it. Well, bro, that is a good one. I'm glad you wrote in. Let me know your story, because a lot of people were interested in here. And I'm so glad you're doing well, and I'm glad you helped out the other brother who wrote in the story before. And just keep doing what you're doing. And you're going to raise your son to be just like you, and that's awesome. Your son's going to see what a strong, masculine guy is, but is still a good guy. He'll know what it's like to have a feminine mother, and he'll probably seek out women just like that, not like your mom and sisters. And frankly, given the description of your mom and sisters, I wouldn't let him anywhere near your son. But anyhow, bro, it's a great story. And gentlemen, there are things you can learn from guys like this. And the thing is, he's an alpha, but he's not a fucking asshole. And that's the cool thing. That's where I want all you guys to be. Find the happy medium. Find the sweet spot. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below what you think about this. Give this guy a shout out in the comments section for getting out of that shitty environment with his freaking crappy stepdad and effing his mother and sisters, because a lot of guys could have gone the opposite path. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.